Hey y'all, it's Chris with Rockin Farm, and it is time for the last day of September garden tour. So the end of September is a really funky time here in Central Texas because a lot of fall garden stuff in Texas really needs to be started with like started plant starts. I've tried getting some of it to go with seeds, but that soil temperature too hot for seeds to grow to the air temperature too cold for plants to grow, just that transition happens so fast here in Central Texas. So I've got some little Brussels sprouts that are really trying to come up. I'm going to try and keep nursing them along, but I'm probably also going to go to the store and see if I can find Brussels sprout plant starts. My really super awesome seed starting system, I'm actually going to link the playlist right up here. So that seed starting system, it works amazing. And I would have loved to have gotten my broccoli and my cauliflower and my Brussels sprouts and all that good stuff going in that seed starting system. But the room that I keep them in, we lost power to it about 8 months ago, and I haven't been able to come up with the cash to get the electrician to come out to get me power back in that room. So my really super awesome seed starting system, it never grew me lettuce during the summer months like I was hoping it was going to, and it wasn't available for me to get plants started. So we may end up going to the big box store and grabbing some plant starts for our fall garden. Other stuff that we'll get started here with seed very soon, lettuces, kales, collards, all that good stuff, that's going to be fine. It's like your brassicas and all that, that it's just that transition. Like right now we're still in the high 80s and our soil temps are still pretty darn warm. So these plants are growing super slow. But then when it decides that it's going to get cold, it just settles in and gets cold. The other part that's kind of funky about this Central Texas end of September time of year is that the death of August is very apparent. But then all the new growth of the cooler weather is there too. So it's like plants look kind of beautifully ucky is the only way I can really describe it, and I'll show you what I mean by that here in just a second. So this is beautifully ucky. This is all the remnants of 115 degrees in August, and this is the brand new growth that is coming on like gangbusters now that we're down in the 80s and we're getting some rain. So it's beautifully ucky. But as I told you, one of the things that's kind of cool about Central Texas is that if you leave stuff alone and you nurse it, you get a second run. So we got a ton of melons in the middle of summer. We just left these plants here and made sure that they got water and made sure that they were well taken care of. And now that the weather is cooling off, we're getting melons again. Melons aren't the only thing that's happening with. All the tomatoes that we nursed through the heat, we're getting tomatoes again, y'all. Let me show you. Look at that little baby solar flare that's coming on for us now. And I would also have to say that we're gonna get a few more Amish paste tomatoes as well. The Romas are making a comeback. And just look at all this new foliage and growth. I mean, these things were looking nasty, but as you can see, here's that nastiness of August that I was telling you about with the beauty of 85-degree late September. These black cherry tomatoes were basically dead, and now we're gonna get a ton of black cherry tomatoes here in late September, early October. We've already been harvesting off of these like mad. The atomic grape tomatoes are gonna make another run, and the yellow pears that were finally starting to peter out are flowering again. So we're not necessarily going to get a ton of production off of this second run of vegetables. What we've noticed for us personally, and we haven't farmed a whole lot in this particular area either, so we're still kind of experimenting. But what a lot of people do is when it gets hot and the tomato production really slows down, wham, they hack them off, they get them all out of there. They wait a couple of weeks and then they put new tomatoes that they started in their seed starting systems that are, 3, 4, 5 weeks old already. They're already maybe 6 or 8 inches tall. They put those in the ground and they nurse those things along through the heat. And then they get that kind of gangbuster second production. So what we've noticed is that what we're going to get out of these tomatoes is going to be probably half of what we got out of them during that first stint from the time we planted them to the time it got super hot. So the time between now when they're fruiting and flowering, and then our first freeze, which is November 15th-ish for us, we're probably only going to get about half as much production. But y'all, I've got 60 gallons of tomatoes in there. So if I get 20 or 30 gallons more, I got a lot of tomatoes this year. We're going to correct a lot of the problems next year that we had this year with overcrowding, stuff like that. We're expecting really good harvest next year. But for us, generally speaking, it's just kind of worth it to nurse the plants through the heat, keep giving them water and all the good nutrients and stuff, even though they're not giving us fruit, in order to get this second fall run out of existing mature plants, than it is to go through all the work of ripping all the plants out, starting seeds, planting new seeds, fertilizing, keeping them protected while they grow, hoping that they get big enough and mature enough to give us a harvest before the first frost, and then ripping them all out again. It's just, for us, it's just worth it to leave them in the ground, nurse them through the heat, and get some more fruit out of them, even though it's maybe not as much as we would have gotten if we just planted a second run. All of the herbs are really coming on too. I just gave this oregano a huge haircut, and you can't even hardly tell that I touched it. The marshmallow is still doing extremely well. I need to get in here and harvest the heck out of this before it gets too cold. I almost wish I had 2 or 3 dehydrators. We've also had quite a few volunteers popping up. I usually plant my garlic mid-October, and so here we are, September 30th. That is the day I am filming this, last day of September. And y'all, I got garlic, so I'm guessing it's last year's garlic that just never sprouted, and now here it is. The sweet potatoes, good Lord, I have fed so many sweet potato greens to the chickens. I've cut them back, I've composted them, I've done all kinds of stuff. These things just keep on going. What I wish I had, and what I'm gonna try to figure out, is these greens, as they spread, they root. And if I'm not mistaken, where they root, they would form another potato, or another tuber. So what I would really like to set up is some sort of a hill where I can just plant them and just let them grow down the hill, and then come in there and harvest when I get around to it. But right now what I've got is this mound. So in order to be able to walk in the garden and not have everything else choked out by sweet potato greens, I've got to keep them trimmed back. We're just waiting for that magical moment when these start turning yellow and withering, and we can get in there and harvest all these sweet potatoes. For us, we're probably looking very end of October, very early November. We'll be getting these sweet potatoes out of the ground and getting them in for storage. And we are simply in awe of the asparagus, y'all. It is getting so big I can't hardly walk past it as far as all this fern growth goes. But we're just really amazed at if I can get down here into the fern growth. So, I mean, just look at how many spears ended up coming out of that root crown. And it just keeps spreading and spearing, and obviously very quickly going to fern. But, you know, I mean, next year, I think they say 10%. So when this stuff starts popping up out of the ground, next April, May-ish, we're going to be out here harvesting 10% of this asparagus, y'all, because it's just, we love asparagus, and we've actually never had the privilege of having asparagus fresh from the garden. So y'all, we can't wait. So peppers here in Central Texas, for some varieties of peppers, they just kind of hang on through the heat, and then as soon as it cools off, y'all, they go absolutely insane. I don't know what I'm gonna do with all these Carolina Reapers. All of a sudden, these plants shot up a foot and just got loaded with Reapers. The jalapeno production this year, we're not getting really big peppers, but y'all, they're good. They're really good flavor. They've got a good heat to them, and they are just coming on like mad. I mean, you can see I'm holding the camera about 2 feet above my head right now, kind of as high as I can reach. So we've got nice, big, tall pepper plants. The poblanos are giving us a ton of peppers as well. Now, what stinks about the poblanos is that, I mean, like that one right there, that's kind of a big one. Like, we're not getting really big poblano peppers. So I need to do some more research, find out whether it's just a brand thing, or whether it's a soil condition thing, or whether it's a me thing. But what we've been doing with these poblanos is we've been throwing them in the dehydrator and drying them out, at which point you call them a chile ancho. And we've been taking the chile anchos and storing them so that we can, at a later date, rehydrate them for making sauces, or crush them for making a chile ancho powder. So even though these are too small to make like a chile relleno out of, these are not going to waste. We're drying them all out and making them into chile anchos, or chopping them up and throwing them in our eggs. So even though they're small, they're not going to waste. Cubanelles are still doing really well for us. We're getting a lot of these peppers off of these cubanelles. We generally let them go red, although these are perfectly edible even at this green stage. And again, this 85-degree weather, they're loving it, and they are loaded with cubanelles and loaded with this pretty little flower. The pickling cucumbers have all been ripped out, and this is more of that ugly, yet still really pretty of the slicing cucumbers. So slicing cucumbers are still giving us a cucumber here and there. I mean, there's one there. We've got little ones there. So we're just letting them go because we're still getting a few cucumbers out of them, so why not? Here's probably the best example of ugly beauty. So, I mean, you can see how nasty all of this looks. All this dead, nasty stuff from the butternut squash. A good chunk of these butternuts are ready to come off. I'm gonna have to get out here and really get to harvesting them before we get rain again, because this is what happens when it rains a ton. And obviously we don't want that. We don't want to lose these butternuts to that. But what it decided to do recently was send off a runner that was laying here on the ground that took off like mad and just started making a whole bunch more fruit. And we decided, you know what? If it wants to go for a little while, if it wants to take over a little bit of our garden, I'm not gonna stop it. This squash plant decided that it was gonna start giving us a whole bunch of squash again. Right now there's just a bunch of flowers in there, but it's been producing more yellow zucchinis for us. And then I do have a second run of yellow zucchinis planted that are coming up. But y'all, there's the pride and joy. Look at all of these tomatillos, y'all. And they will just keep doing this right up until that first freeze. So once we get notification that it's looking like it's gonna be a really cold night, we will come out here and harvest everything on these plants, regardless of how small it is. And then we'll come out the next morning, and if it froze, these plants will be withered and laying on the ground. But you know, right now, I've got no complaints. We're actually harvesting so many tomatillos and so many jalapenos that I've been canning a ton of green sauce lately. And y'all, salsa verde, tomatillo salsa, it's my fave. It's my absolute favorite salsa that my wife makes. So I could not be happier that these 5 tomatillos have produced this much mass and are producing this many tomatillos. So y'all, that's it for last day of September 2020. As bad as the garden looked the last day of August, I think it looks equally as good now. And I think it's just going to get prettier from here. We've never been huge fall gardeners in the past. My goal is to have this entire place just as green as it is now. If I have to plant a bunch of stuff that we don't even eat just to give it away, to make sure that I've got, you know, some blues and some reds and all different shades of green in this garden, then that's what we're going to do. We're super excited about getting into the fall season here. We're excited about what the garden has given us and where it's headed. It's that time of year where we're going to start getting into some fall garden projects here really soon to start getting ready for a spring garden. That's the thing about being a gardener, y'all. It's September 30th, and right now, oh, my brain is just locked in on April 1st. Locked in on April 1st. I can't wait to start getting all these tomatoes and tomatillos and everything back in the ground next year. So I'm enjoying life where we're at, making some plans for a beautiful fall, and already looking forward to a wonderful spring. So I don't know, we'll definitely see you again with another garden video at the end of October. We should not have had a freeze by then yet. I'll be able to give you an update on production, show you what's sprouting and what's growing, and see what we're starting to do as we're really starting to get into cooler temperatures for us anyhow. Not cooler for a lot of my northern friends, but cooler for us. So look for that end of October garden tour, and I guess until I see y'all again, just remember to be happy and live healthy.